Geology, Geology, Geology. This is Daniel Minisini, your inquisitive geologist. Welcome to another program of the Mini Geology Show. Today with us, the Geologists Association, an association founded in 1858, based in London, and it represents the interface between the strictly professional aspects of science, the knowledgeable enthusiast, and the wider public. This is one of the main reasons why we are so proud to have here two representatives of the Geologists Association, because we put in connection our beloved science of geology with society at large. Welcome, Lucia. Welcome, Liam.
Hi.
Please introduce yourself.
Liam, do you want to go first?
Okay, my name's Liam Gallagher. I'm the association magazine editor, and I work as a consultant geologist.
Hi, my name is Lucia Perez Diaz. I am a research associate at the University of Oxford and also work for Halliburton as a geodynamics specialist. And at the GA, I am currently one of the vice presidents. I've been a member of council for a little bit, and I became one of the vice presidents just a couple of weeks ago.
Congratulations, Lucia. Lucia, what are you proud of about the GA, the Geologists Association?
Oh gosh, a lot of things. I think the main thing is what you said in the introduction, which is what kind of brought me to the GA initially as a member, and then kind of drew me to get more involved. And it's the fact that it's an association that is there to bring geology to anybody that has an interest in geology, and even to go beyond that and make people interested in it that might not know very much about the science. I think we, as an association, do a good job and put a lot of effort into that. It makes me proud to be part of that, to be part of bringing the science closer to people and see how people get engaged with it. It's very rewarding as well. Liam?
It's the inclusivity of the Geologists Association. From the very beginning, amateurs, women enthusiasts, all welcome, from the highest PhD graduate to the lowest member of the public, getting outdoors into the field, showing and sharing geological aspects of the UK and beyond.
When you enter into the website of the GA, can I call it GA? Do you call it GA?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you enter into the website, the very first thing you read is for all geologists, both professional and amateur. What's the difference between a professional and an amateur geologist for you?
I guess what we try to say with that is that maybe unlike other associations like the Geological Society of London here, where you need to at least have some education in geology to be a member, we also welcome those that have geology as a hobby. So I guess a distinction there is basically whether you have studied geology, whether you have an undergraduate degree or we've gone beyond that maybe. So we have people that have PhDs and so on. You can be a member, and if you don't, you can also be a member, and you can use the association to learn about geology.
Liam, do you see a difference in passion in between professionals versus amateur? A difference in their curiosity?
Well, some of the most enthusiastic and curious geologists I know are amateurs. They are so keen and so thirsty for knowledge. Professionals who work in geology every day, every hour of every day of every week can become a little bit stale, a little bit tired. I know the feeling myself sometimes. So the real insightful questions sometimes come from the enthusiast, someone who's really interested in what's going on the planet and outside their window.
What are the professions of the non-professional geologist? Where do they come from? What is their experience?
Absolutely, any walk of life you can think of. In my local society, we have again, highly educated doctors, nurses, lawyers, bankers, down to lower skilled professions. Not wanting to name any, so not to insult anybody who might have those roles, but yeah, people, as Lucia says, without formal education in any science really, who just love the outdoors and what makes up the planet.
How do they end up joining the association? Or first, how do they connect with geology if they are not geologists, but they are just passionate about this discipline?
Well, I think that's one of the challenges, or one of the things that we work hard on, is to make people aware of the existence of the association, so that then they have a group to join that allows them to pursue that passion and to learn more about geology. I think there are several routes, several ways that people come to us. I think one of them is through local groups. So people might engage with their local geology group. They might hear about field trips or join some of those meetings. I think also there is a lot of word of mouth going around. So something that I would say characterizes our membership is that everybody's really proud of being a member, because we're kind of like a big family. So then people will tell other people, oh, if you're interested in geology, why don't you come along to a lecture or come along to a field trip? So I think our membership actually do a very good job at promoting the GA and what the GA do and bringing others with them.
Liam, you have been engaged for a long time with the association. What is your experience about the amateurs? How do they connect with geology? I'm thinking maybe about fossils or minerals. What is your experience?
Well, as a long-standing member, I've had the pleasure of leading one or two field trips on behalf of the Geologists Association, and I'd safely say that perhaps 70% of the attendants on field trips are amateur geologists, amateur enthusiasts, and they are literally thrilled by the recovery of a fossil in the chalk or the limestone or whatever rock you might be looking at, and they will ask many questions: how it got there, what its mode of life was, what's it called, why is it preserved in the way it's preserved. They just want to absorb as much knowledge about that local. Perhaps it's a site local to them, perhaps somewhere they've never been before. As Lucia mentioned, we have a lot of local societies and affiliated societies who are under the umbrella of the Geologists Association, so they can enjoy the benefits of GA field trips, GA lectures, visiting lectures from the GA recommend, absorb all that experience that the GA has to offer.
Lucia, what about the professionals? What do professionals ask you to do? Why do professionals they join the association?
In the professionals group, we have everything from people that have been geologists for many decades that are in industry or in academia, to students that are at MC, PhD levels. So we have a really quite a wide group there. I think a lot of them join to be able to access the offer of lectures, field trips. So all those opportunities to maybe come across something that interests them, that they can take part in. It's just broadening the offer of events that they can access. And also, I think a lot of them are looking to find somewhere where they can mingle with people that come from very different backgrounds. I personally, Liam was saying that amateurs will ask all sorts of questions and be very
inquisitive.
They do one thing that professionals, we sometimes stop doing, which is they ask any question. They don't worry about if it's a dumb question, you know. for me as a professional, I really like discussing things with this type of group of people with very varied backgrounds, because it kind of leads me to start thinking about what I do in different ways. So I think a lot of the professional members of the GA also like that. They also like being asked questions that maybe they're not asked normally, or discuss topics in a different way. So it's really beneficial for many reasons to have that sort of interaction, I think.
Have you ever had in the Geologists Association a president that is not a professional geologist?
Yeah, yes, I was just trying to think, looking back through history, we certainly have had in reasonably recent past presidents who weren't working geologists or even geoscientists.
And what is the imprinting that they give to the society? I bet that is a different point of view on everything on geology, since they don't do it for profit.
Well, they're certainly still extremely knowledgeable about geology and geoscience. So they bring that, as Lucia alluded to, that other way of thinking about geology and its importance to society as a whole, rather than looking inward, as professionals probably do every day in their own little bubbles. Someone with an enormous amount of knowledge of geology, without necessarily the academic qualifications to prove it, can still direct an association like ours incredibly efficiently.
I think that you should be like very proud to mix in these two parts of the society. I'm curious about what it happens when you put together people that are professional and amateurs together, like you brought them to the field. How do they interact in the field or in a class if you give a lecture?
Well, for me, out in the field, sometimes it's very difficult to tell who's the professional and who's the amateur. Like I say, these people are sometimes extremely knowledgeable, and we as professionals are often guilty of perhaps forgetting more than we remember about the subject we were taught. It's the interaction of for me personally, I'll go on a Geologists Association field trip, which is being led by, let's say, a structural geologist. I myself a paleontologist by training, a biostratigrapher, and so I can learn or relearn those aspects of geology that aren't perhaps in my day-to-day work. And as Lucia said, not be afraid to ask that slightly naive question, perhaps. Not a stupid question, more naive or simple question. And if the nominated leader is perhaps not able to answer it, there's bound to be someone in the group who can always offer a suggestion or an opinion, or lead you to a reference or another person or way to find out the answer.
Beautiful. Lucia, what is the most important thing that you would like people on the street to understand about geology? So now we go beyond the professionals and the amateurs that they love geology.
Well, I think a lot of people have spoken about this. I think at the moment, when we hear about geology, say in the news, or at least before the corona crisis, we tend to hear about it in almost a negative way. We hear about the environmental impact of the oil and gas industry, or we hear about communities that are unhappy about fracking and so on and so forth. I think something that we are able to do through the GA is kind of broadening people's view of geology. It's such a broad discipline, and geoscience is very important in many aspects of life and for very many reasons. So I think that's maybe something that I would like to work more towards the public having a better understanding of what geologists do and how we are this huge pool of people with different knowledge and we really contribute to a lot of things, and not maybe just those few, not just those few that you might repeatedly hear about in the news.
You, Liam?
Well, there is a problem at the moment. Geology is almost a dirty word in the current climate, and that's really unfortunate, because what we as geologists have to do is educate the public that this is a very important science. Huge crossover with environmental science, for instance. Climate change research has many geoscientists involved, and it's as Lucia says, just it's the PR, the public relations of geology in Northwest Europe at the moment isn't good, and we need to find a way of promoting our science.
Why do you say, Liam, that why do you perceive that geology is a dirty word right now?
The news debate is led by fracking, big oil, pollution, and the climate crisis. At the heart of a lot of those inverted commas problems are geological processes, and it's instead of celebrating the engineering and the science achievements, which will go into fixing a lot of the problems associated with those industries. I mean, we had a lot of problems with the coal industries going back hundreds of years, and we have turned our geoscience knowledge to the mitigation of those, and we've got to keep reinventing our science to promote geology whilst protecting the climate and the planet for future generations.
I read in between lines that we geologists were not doing a very good job about communicating how useful is our science, our professions. What should we do in order to improve the communication to society at large?
I think we, at least I'm speaking for professionals and those of us that maybe are a bit too used to only talking about geology in a very technical level. Most of my time I spend talking to people that either have a similar knowledge level to me, they're in my discipline, they do a similar thing to what I do. I think we need to be more willing to put our time into also talking to those that might not be geologists or might have very little geological knowledge. Back when I was doing my PhD, one of my advisors was very keen on this and got a few of the students involved in a small science communication project. And we were writing our work, so the work we were doing for a PhD, which is very technical work, into articles that could be understood by non-geologists. And that small thing that we did then that was circulated, it was like a university-wide project. Lots of departments were doing it. For me, it started a sort of change in mindset. And nowadays, every opportunity I have to go and talk to, whether it is a local geological society, so there is amateurs and professionals, whether it is to go to a museum, to an event where I'm talking to children, whether it is now that we're in lockdown, things like Skype a Scientist, where I'm Skyping with a school children in the US somewhere and telling them about plate tectonics and why they should care about it and how does that impact the world they live in. I think putting time into that kind of thing is, one, really rewarding, and two, is what is going to change that societal perception that geology is oil and gas pollution, bad stuff like
So
Liam
you,
was.
Lucia, you're thinking about doing little steps in a local environment, doing something that is small but practical, with a direct link with people in the society. What about thinking about a larger impact, something going in the national newspapers, in the national broadcaster, TVs or radio? What do you think about this other venue to communicate?
Well, I was thinking about both, because I think sometimes those initiatives that start very small and very local can actually reach very far. As an example, I wrote a little article on rifting after there were some stories in the press about some cracks appearing in East Africa somewhere. And that, which was a very small thing, I thought, okay, I'll just write a little article explaining what rifting is. It ended up going viral. It reached something like 3 million reads, and it certainly went global. So even something like that a single person can do, if several of us were actually engaging in these things, then actually it would not just have a local impact, it would go beyond that. I think also from the GA perspective, for example, events like our annual Festival of Geology, putting something together that is a celebration, or that it feels like a celebration of geology, also really helps, because we might only reach a limited number of people, but if those people engage with this type of event, it's a very accessible event. You don't need to have any prior knowledge. So again, it's bringing geology closer to the public in a way that they will engage with it.
And Lucia, in order to steer a little bit these random writings that we do, like the one that you just described, and it went viral, but without really understanding why it went viral, how can we do to boost this and create a path where we can replicate that? Like Liam, you are in one of the highest position in one of the oldest associations of geologists in a main hub global like the city of London. Don't we have connections with the newspapers and the TVs that can help in spreading the word?
We do. We're here in the centre of London, and I think we are perhaps guilty in the recent past of being a little bit shy, a little bit reticent to self-promote in that way. It can be seen as quite a dangerous thing, as Lucia alluded to. You say something in social media and suddenly it's exploding and maybe twisted slightly out of context. So you have to be very careful with the way you manage that kind of self-promotion. We're very extremely fortunate to have Professor Ian Stewart as a very good friend of the Geologists Association, who is one of the very few geoscientists on this side of the Atlantic who does appear on television, who does present geoscience in an extremely publicly accessible way. So we have him as a friend, but you're probably right. We don't do enough at that highest level to get the message across that geoscience is good for the planet.
And Leah, why don't we think about creating a new professional figure where you are a geologist as a background, but somebody teaches you to have this careful approach with the media so that you can filter the passion that we have without saying things that they can use against us?
Yeah, I mean that's an extremely good idea, and I'm pretty sure someone of a slightly younger generation than me, Lucia, and a few of the guys and girls we've had at our student symposium are extremely good geoscientists and extremely good on social media and using it to promote their research subjects. So a generation or two down from me certainly have their eye on the ball in that those sort of avenues to spread the news.
I think it's really accelerating the willingness of people to run the risk of being maybe saying something that then maybe is taken out of context by a couple of media outlets, say. People will take that risk because at the same time you are reaching so many others. With this article that I was mentioning, I had both sort of, let's say, sensationalist, I don't know, maybe not the best of newspapers, taking bits and pieces from it and kind of putting them into a different article that then really didn't feel at all like what I said. But I also had emails from people that homeschool their children saying this was wonderful. So you get both. And my personal experience is that you get a lot more of the good than the bad. So it's just, I guess, up to everyone to try to manage that and limit the bad. But no, I think it's really accelerating, even for the GA. I don't know, in the last 5 years, we are so much more present online now. We are tweeting all the time. We are sharing things in our website for people to access geology, say now in the time of lockdown. We started this Geology from Your Sofa initiative. So we're putting a lot of things out there and hopefully reaching more and more people every day. So,
by the way, I would like to touch on another characteristic of the Geologists Association, which is the history. So founded in 1858. So geology has deep roots in the United Kingdom, and your association, the GA, is an example, founded in 1858. So how important is to keep this historical heritage alive?
Well, sorry, Lucia,
no,
after you.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying it's extremely important for the social history of a country as small as the United Kingdom, or a group of countries as small as the United Kingdom. We have a remarkably diverse, probably uniquely for the size of this island, diverse geology, and our industrial history is indelibly tied to that. So from the middle of the 1800s, when our industrial revolution kicked off, the country's prosperity was tied directly to its geology. And so the first members of the Geologists Association were going out into the field on a Saturday afternoon to working quarries, to working open cast coal mines, to new railway cuttings. So it was raw geology and a direct association with the industrial prosperity of the country at the time.
How do we keep alive these stronger characteristics in your association, the historical part of the association?
It's a difficult question. I was going to say, I was actually recently browsing through one of our photographic archives. So the GA has the Carrick archive, just a huge collection of photos where you can see all sorts of things. I particularly like fieldwork photos and sort of photos taken in the early days of the association of people going in fieldworks and such, and can read on the website about the history of the GA. I quite like history anyway, and I think, like me, probably others in the association quite enjoy that type of thing being there. Also, I think it was like a couple of years ago, we were involved in preserving and sort of rescuing Charles Lyell's notebooks. Liam, you might know more about this because I was very early days in.
Just last year, yeah, we've been reasonably high up in a consortium who've actually saved Charles Lyell's original notebooks for the country. So just under £1 million, I think, were raised through various appeals by various geological associations and bodies throughout the UK, and they will now be kept in Scotland, where he did a lot of his work. An awful lot of that money was by individual donations. So people are clearly, members of the association are clearly interested in the history of the association and what it represents. Geology is, after all, the history of the planet. It's history with an awful lot of time attached to it. And we occasionally run field trips that were run 100 years ago or 150 years ago to the same quarry or the same railway cutting or the same coastal cliff section, and you're seeing almost exactly the same outlook as the folks over a century ago. It's really quite a powerful connection that geology just lasts an awful long time.
I've read a couple of very peculiar facts in the history of GA. One is that ladies, they were eligible for membership of the association from its very beginning in 1858. This is a very peculiar choice, especially knowing that your neighbors in the Geological Society of London, they did not accept ladies until 1919.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
something
good for us.
happy with. Yeah.
I think this is a very important aspect of history that if you highlight it even more in your society, is gonna put the society in a very nice light and invite many new members. So this is one of the reasons why I think it is important to remember and keep alive the history of the associations. And another peculiarity is that in your association, there is no age limit. So I read that even a 6 years old can become a member. Is that true?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to, there was a young man back in the very early days who became a life member at the age of 7. It paid for by his father, I think, is the full story. But we have our Rock Watch section, our junior section of the GA. So from 5 to 16, I think, younger members of society can learn all about geology and the environment, and then as they progress through their teens and become young adults, they're welcome to continue their association with everything geological within the GA itself. And we hand out a large number of certificates every year for people who have had 50 years unbroken membership. And it surprises me just how many per year are handed out.
I mean, really, there's no reason not to. I think for an association like the GA, where what we're trying to do is bring geology closer to people, there's no reason to have an age limit. Everybody should be able to join, and why not?
Well, sometimes associations, they're like clubs, so they want to self-define the people that they belong.
We've never had a qualification as a qualifier for membership. So you don't need a degree, you don't need a PhD, you don't need to pass any exam or any interview. You just need to be interested in the science.
And another important characteristic of the Geologists Association are the field trips, the excursions, or you call them also field meetings. These are the backbone of the association since the very beginning. Why do you think, or this is maybe my perception, that geologists, they go less and less to the field to touch the rocks?
Well, that's a real shame, because there's nothing personally I enjoy more than being outside, and if there's rocks and fossils to look at, all the better. Again, I guess modern society, and perhaps slightly more on your side of the Atlantic, there are laws and lawsuits that can follow from accidents, etc. If you're in the field, and many times if you're in quarries or on coast sections, the hazards are slightly elevated. But you've got to do, well, we like to think we do proper risk assessments, and we only take people where it's safe to take them in groups of a size relevant to the location.
Mm. I think also, say, for professionals particularly, some of us work in fields that don't require you to do your research to go to the field. For example, a lot of my work involves computer modeling, big scale geological modeling, plate modeling. So I don't get many opportunities, if any, at my work to go to the field, which is where something like the GA kind of comes in. And I think most geologists enjoy being outdoors and enjoy going to the field. So then you can still do it. You can maintain that alive in your life by joining something like the GA and still going to the field and maybe looking at something that has nothing to do with what you do, and learn something new and still keep doing that. But yeah, I agree with you that it sometimes it seems like it's slowing down, and I think partly it is because for some people it's just not essential to what they do.
Well, we need to emphasize the fact that it seems it is not essential, but it is essential. It's maybe as essential as reading a book of philosophy or talking with our grandparents. It's something that it changes your mindset. It's something that it maintains your backbone of being a geologist. And we probably have to communicate better, going back to the bad communicators that we are. That is probably a very important point. So I'm very glad that you have the platform where to emphasize this very important fact, going to the fields. And we all see that if you go through the website of Geologists Association, going to the field is a backbone of the association. I think I read that you ran more than 400 field trips.
Yeah, including the local group.
Yeah.
Outside of this unfortunate COVID situation, every single weekend in the year, 10, 15, 20 of the local groups will run their own field trips. And 10 or 15, 20 times during the year, the GA will run
so
UK.
400 field trips per year.
Yeah, if you include all the local and affiliated groups, I'm sure it's in the hundreds.
Wow.
Yeah.
And yeah, tell me, Lucia.
Even if you can't join a group for whatever reason, something else that the GA has is these field guides. Have many of them for lots of places. I mean, they cover all of the UK and go from anything from a walk around London looking at building stones, for example, and you follow a little guide that somebody's written. Or you can go to the countryside somewhere and look at a particular outcrop and there'll be a guide. So even if you don't have the possibility of going with the group, you could still pick up one of these GA guides and, you know, plan your own trip with your family or with your friends.
And the Geologists Association, like several other geological associations, they see that their membership has steadily declined, especially over the last couple of decades. I read that in the case of the GA, it moved from 2,800 20 years ago to 1,300 right now. What is the meaning and what is the implication for geology?
Well, the implication for geology, as I see it, is that the public perception of what geology is, as we spoke about earlier, becomes foggier and foggier, because the more people who are members of something like the GA or one of its local groups, the more chat about the facts of geoscientists there are around the school gates or in the supermarket with friends and colleagues. The more local members we have, the more disparate our message can get, the farthest corners of the country. As membership declines, you lose that local contact. You lose almost whole areas. We've lost a couple of local groups recently due to dwindling membership numbers. So those places in the country their appreciation of what geology does and how it affects their everyday lives is perhaps lost. There are no local champions anymore who will go to the local church hall and give a little hour's talk on a Monday evening or something like that. So we risk losing the connection at the grassroots with the population.
Lucia, what is your point of view?
Well, it's a big challenge, I think, moving forward. And actually earlier this year we had this big workshop at the GA where all of council, we got together for several hours, and we talked about membership, talked about what we thought our members want from us, how can we make our members stay engaged, how can we offer things that they will appreciate, how can we bring others that maybe don't know about us into the association. And it's a big challenge. I think partly geologists, both professional, also amateurs, these days have maybe a lot more offer than they used to have. You can be a member of many societies. And so people might choose to only be members of a few. And so then you're losing maybe some potential members. For people like students, they will always be concerned about, well, if I belong to too many societies, I maybe don't have the money to belong to those many. So which ones should I choose? So you end up having to try and cater for very different profiles. You've got students, you've got, I don't know, amateurs, families, you've got professionals, trying to cater to all of them and build almost like a family that they want to belong to. It's difficult. It's very difficult. And I think what we need to do more is, or we need to continue doing, is talking to our members and maintaining those links with the communities. Because at the end of the day, it's them that can tell us what works, what doesn't, and how can we keep our membership numbers at a level that we're happy going on.
I understand, Lucia and Liam, that the GA has very strong bonds and relationship with very small local groups around the United Kingdom. What is your relationship with the prestigious universities that you have there, like Lucia, that is at Oxford?
Nothing official other than members of the geoscience departments in these various institutions are invariably members of the GA, sometimes both GA and Geological Society, but there are no formal links with Earth Sciences Department at Oxford, Cambridge, University College London, Durham, Manchester. None of these have a formal relationship with the Geologists Association, other than having individual members who happen to be academics within them.
What about the other universities? Is there any case where there is an official link with maybe smaller universities?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, well, the GA's library is within the UCL library in London, so University College London. So that's the only thing I can think of.
Well, we have our Festival of Geology at the University College London too. So there is a very good link with UCL, but it's not that again is through people who work at UCL who are GA members being able to accommodate us at various times of the year with their facilities. But I wouldn't say it's a formal memorandum of understanding or anything like that.
What is the most important problem that you face in the GA? Is it the one about membership, or there is something else that is even more important?
Well, membership is important. Without members, you have no association. We're very fortunate that we have an extremely talented Treasury department, and our funds are reasonably healthy at the moment. So
where is the funding coming from?
Well, it's been built up over 170 years, some shrewd investments, and the GA is fortunate in that there are a lot of professional and academic geologists who, when they pass away, they leave some of their estate to the GA. The Curry Fund, Professor Curry, who was a very famous geologist at University College, he died just a year or two after I graduated from there. He left a considerable amount of money to the Geologists Association, and from that pot of money, from the investment of that money, we're able to make awards from that to deserving causes every year. And,
so funding is healthy, the membership not that much. So do you still think that membership is the main problem?
Yeah, attracting the younger demographic and instilling in them the genuine belief that geoscience is important to their lives.
And don't you think that this is the same problem that is faced by all of these prestigious universities that you mentioned before?
Well, attracting students to geoscience has been a problem. I mean, I teach at Birmingham University, and attracting students to geoscience over other subjects has its issues. Fieldwork being one of them. Guys and girls perhaps deciding that that's not for them, and taking another science course perhaps that's more classroom based.
But on the other side, we just mentioned...
It's also what happens after you take your geoscience degree or your geoscience qualification. What are the job prospects, and in what kinds of industries?
So shouldn't you join forces, the geological associations and the powerful universities?
Well, that's kind of a political question.
Yeah, it's not
where is the political issue?
Well, all the universities have their own ways of thinking, their ways of whether as a whole institution or as individual departments, science departments or whatever. They will have their own agendas. They will have their own 5-year plans, 10-year plans.
A way that we do engage, and we've started engaging more with universities, whether that's Oxford and Cambridge or any other, is through the students themselves. And through things like the GA Student Symposium, which happens once a year. It's been running now for 4 years in a row, I believe, which is a one-day conference purely for students. All the presenters are students. The audience can be anybody from the GA, amateur, professional. We have members of industry coming. And after every student symposium, we've worked towards keeping relationships with the students that have attended. So we almost have these representatives, if you like, in different departments that can tell their peers and the rest of the students, oh, I went to this, let me tell you about it. And maybe the next year they can bring more people. So we try to have some links there, but not so much maybe with the universities themselves, but actually with the students and with the student societies within departments. And that's a good way. It's been working quite well, at least, at retaining some of the younger members and bringing some more.
In your official position right now in the Geologists Association, what are you trying to change?
Well, it's quite early for me. I've only been vice president for 2 weeks.
What is your goal?
I think we are already moving towards engaging more people and sort of making the GA widely known again, if that makes sense. It's almost, to me, it feels like the GA was very popular. As you said, Danielle, had a huge membership. Things declined a little bit, maybe went a little bit quiet, and now we're again getting a little bit louder. So I'll be quite happy if by the end of my term as vice president, we've managed to
Lucia, do you have already something in mind on how to achieve this goal?
I think a lot of what I have in mind are things that have been rolling since before I was vice president. Things like the student symposium, things like improving the way we advertise parts of the GA, like our ability to provide funding for research, our awards, encouraging people to nominate those that deserve an award and to recognize talent where they see it. So I think those are some of the things that I'm probably going to be putting my time into.
Yeah, and please continue to write those short articles that they go viral.
Well, yeah, I will try. I don't know.
Liam?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Lucia's worked very hard on giving the GA a brand, a recognizable brand, the logos and the fonts that we use, bringing in some 21st century protocols to the way the association is run.
Are you changing the logo, or are you reshaping
No,
the
just
logo?
making sure it's always the same, and Lucia can explain better than I can, but we, as he's kind of alluded to, we got a bit relaxed in the way we sent out literature, promotional information, and I think it's important if the GA is to remain front and center of geoscience in this country, is that it's recognizable as the GA. When you put up a poster or put out something on Twitter, you have to recognize that's from the GA as soon as you see it, almost regardless of the content. And that's something Lucia's worked hard on since she came onto council. And the student end of things and the junior end of things are where our future 50-year certificates are going to come from. And so those are the guys and girls we need to attract and retain.
Yeah, I don't know. I forgot all about the branding after having really gone on and on to council about it. But as I was saying, because the different members of council end up doing different things, so you have maybe something being put up on Facebook by one person, but then somebody else is managing the Twitter, somebody else is printing leaflets. So yeah, a couple of years ago, it became quite clear that we need to have a standard that we all use so that everything is very clearly recognizable as GA and everything comes from the same place, let's say. So yeah, that was a big task, still ongoing.
Do you want to add something? We still have a couple of minutes for you, Lucia, and for you, Liam.
I think I would just like to encourage people to at least find out what the GA is, what the GA does. We're a very inclusive organization. We welcome everybody. If you're interested in geology, there will be something there for you. And now that we're all still in lockdown, or a lot of us are still in lockdown, we started this Geology from Your Sofa initiative. If you go to the website, it's there, front and center. And we have all these past lectures and podcasts and resources that you can access completely for free. And it's a flavor of what the GA do. And it should definitely be enough for anyone to get a good idea of what the GA stands for and hopefully become a member. And after lockdown ends, start coming to field trips with us.
Liam?
Yeah, we have a little initiative we use with our junior members called Geology in Your Shopping Basket. So I'd encourage your listeners, next time they're at the supermarket, approaching the checkout counter, take a look in your shopping basket, and almost everything in there, from the tins in which the baked beans are, to the toothpaste, it's got chalk in it, to the pasta, has to have been grown in a field, the soil will depend on the geology. Everything in your shopping basket has a geological aspect to it, to a greater or lesser extent. So bear that in mind. Geoscientists are important for everyday life.
Well, thank you very much, Lucia and Liam, representatives of the Geologists Association, based in London and founded in 1858. This was another episode of Mini Geology, and you can listen to it in minigeology.com. and you can write me at minigeology@gmail.com to propose new topics to talk about, to propose new people to interview. So thank you very much, Lucia. Thank you, Liam.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.